all have dreams. Dreams of a better life, better health, and a better future for those we care for most. Our families, our friends, and the communities in which we live. At the Tonoto Foundation, we believe that dreams become reality when people equally are given the opportunity to fulfill their potential. And that equal opportunity starts with equal access to quality education. We are dedicated to helping people achieve this from the start, creating learning environments that nurture hope and promote aspiration, from early education all the way to tertiary pursuits, and building leaders for a future world. Enabling new and dynamic research in the area of life sciences. Quality education doesn't just improve lives, it transforms lives. It accelerates equal opportunity to give people and their communities choices. At the Tonoto Foundation, we believe in a future where equal opportunity is a force for positive change, and that a quality education will always be the foundation for that future.
Visi kami untuk setiap anak, hidup utuh sepenuhnya. Doa kami untuk setiap hati, tekad untuk mewujudkannya. Wahana Visi Indonesia. Lebih dari 20 tahun, WVI sebagai Yayasan Kemanusiaan Kristen dan mitra terpercaya World Vision International hadir di berbagai pelosok Indonesia untuk memberikan harapan bagi anak-anak Indonesia tanpa membedakan suku, agama, ras, dan gender, dengan pendekatan pengembangan transformasional melalui penguatan kapasitas masyarakat, advokasi, dan tanggap bencana. Kami tidak bekerja sendiri. WVI bermitra dengan perusahaan, lembaga donor, pemerintah dan mitra lokal, pemuka agama, relawan, tokoh publik, serta media untuk menghadirkan dunia yang lebih baik bagi anak-anak. WVI fokus pada kesehatan, perlindungan anak, pendidikan, pengembangan ekonomi keluarga, penguatan kebijakan, dan terus meningkatkan kapasitas dalam merespons setiap bencana. Serta terus melakukan inovasi program berbasis teknologi digital sebagai bagian dari akuntabilitas untuk masyarakat dan mitra kerja. Komitmen kami semakin teguh. Bersama anak, masyarakat, dan mitra kerja, Wahana Visi Indonesia akan terus melayani yang rentan, menghargai setiap martabat manusia, ambil bagian dalam mewujudkan perubahan bagi anak-anak Indonesia.
Halo, selamat malam Bapak Ibu semuanya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on which part of the world you are. Greeting to all Bapak Ibu, the honorable panelists, the moderator, and all the participants. On behalf of Philanthropy Indonesia, we are welcoming you to the FIFEST 2022 on today's session, Climate Change, Green Recovery, and the Role of Philanthropy Post-COP26. Thank you for virtually attending this evening dialogue. I hope everyone in this room in good condition and healthy to ensure our body system always in high side. I am Dinda Sonaloka, will be the MC for today's forum. Bapak Ibu, prior to the dialogue, let me invite Pak Agus Yahya, our Executive Director of Philanthropy Indonesia, to deliver a welcoming speech. Pak Gusman, the time is yours.
Thank you, Dinda. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I would like to greet our distinguished speakers who will be joining us today. We have Helen Mountford. She'll be joining us via recorded message. She's the president and the CEO of ClimateWorks Foundation. I also would like to welcome His Excellency Ambassador Rachmat Witoelar. He's the Indonesia's Minister of Environment for 2004-2009, and he's currently the President's Special Envoy for Climate Change. I also would like to welcome my friend Agus Sari, the CEO of Landscape Indonesia. Also my friend Klaus Milke. He is the chairman of the steering group of Foundations 20, in which Philanthropy Indonesia is also part of Foundations 20. Professor Yunita Winarto, who will also be our moderator today. She is the Board of Trustees of Bina Swadaya Foundation, as well as also the member of the Advisory Board of Philanthropy Indonesia. Last but not least, our distinguished participants who are attending our forum today. I'd like to welcome to Philanthropy Festival 2022. The Philanthropy Festival 2022 is a platform for philanthropy stakeholders addressing and sharing mainstream issues, initiatives, innovation, policies, and best practices of philanthropy engagement in Indonesia. The theme for this year's event, a Philanthropy Hub, Strengthening Philanthropy Ecosystem to Accelerate the Achievement of Sustainable Development Goals. Carrying this theme, the forum shall elaborate opportunities, strategies, and priorities in developing Indonesia's philanthropy ecosystem that will help accelerate the achievement of SDGs, as well as all global and national agenda. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, COP26 was held in November 2021 at Glasgow, become the center of attention of all actors and stakeholders from various sectors to increase their understanding and awareness regarding climate urges. The active roles and contributions of philanthropy is considered essential and critical in accelerating the achievement of the SDGs and addressing climate change urgencies. Today's session, entitled Climate Change, Green Recovery, and the Role of Philanthropy Post-COP26, we'll discuss important challenges and opportunities for philanthropy, along with the other stakeholders, in addressing climate change urgencies. Progress is being made in many places, but to achieve the goals, we need to amplify philanthropy roles through collective action and collaboration. The spirit of collaboration and cooperation among all parties is indeed imperative to strengthen our effort in addressing national and global issues, including climate change. On behalf of Philanthropy Indonesia, we welcome you all to this session and thank you for being part of Philanthropy Festival. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Pak Gusman, for a wonderful welcoming speech. So, Bapak dan Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure to join all the activities of FIFEST 2022 in this month. But for further information about the event, please visit fifest.id. Moving forward, please allow me to introduce Bu Yunita Triwardani Winarto, who will be our moderator. Bu Yunita is Emeritus Professor in Anthropology, Faculty of Social and Political Science, University of Indonesia, the Academy Professor Indonesia in Social Sciences and Humanities under the auspices of the Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Science, a member of a Cultural Commission of Indonesian Academy of Science, and member of Supervisory Board of Philanthropy Indonesia. Without any further ado, Bu Yunita, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mbak Dinda, for introducing me. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you around the world, and also those who come from various places in Indonesia. So first of all, my sincere gratitude to Mr. Gusman Yahya to invite me to chair this very honorable event with very prominent speakers. So I would like to welcome our distinguished speakers. Thank you very much for your willingness to share your experience, your works, your thoughts, your ideas to us in this very special moment as a part of the Philanthropy Indonesia Festival 2022. I also welcome all attendees who already agreed to allocate their time. Thank you for your time to be with us. We invite you all to be active, participate in the discussion following the presentation by the honorable speakers. Now, before listening to the speaker's presentation, I would like to ask you all attendees to write down later on, after listening to the presentations, your question and answers in the question and answer box. And please don't forget to write the name of the speakers to whom you address your questions so that the speakers will easily pinpoint your questions. So now I will present you, the overlook of the objectives and the background of this particular event. Yeah. Okay. Now, sorry. I'm sorry, wait a moment. Yeah, please. Yeah, so the background of this forum, as mentioned earlier by Mr. Gusman Yahya, is that the post-COP26, the philanthropy sector is deemed necessary to optimize its role, potential, and contribution to addressing the impacts of climate change. So philanthropy can catalyze and mobilize collective actions with multiple stakeholders. Philanthropic actors could maximize this ability as a strategy to intensify mainstreaming principles related to climate into their organizations and programs. Therefore, Philanthropy Indonesia holds this forum for discussion and sharing knowledge related to best practices, opportunities to optimize the role of philanthropic actors, and alternative funding schemes for climate change and green recovery. Philanthropy Indonesia encourages the forum to create a collective action as a part of the collaboration for strengthening the philanthropy community. So the objectives of this forum is to discuss and mainstream the best practices, challenges, and opportunities for philanthropy actors in maximizing their role in climate change after the COP26 momentum. To explore alternative funding schemes for climate change, philanthropy programs, and green recovery. We will listen later from Mr. Agus Sari about the opportunities to find funding schemes, to collect recommendations, ideas, and the first step for collective action on climate change. So I do hope with my colleagues from Philanthropy Indonesia that through the discussion this evening or this morning also, to reach these objectives. Hopefully we can discuss what are the best practices, challenges, and opportunities that we can contribute to maximize our role in climate change. So let's move on to introduce the honorary speakers. Unfortunately, as mentioned by Dinda, that or Mr. Guzman, that Miss Helen Mountford cannot be with us. But anyway, we will listen to her presentations through the video presentation, the pre-recorded video she sent to us. So I would like to introduce first the biodata of all speakers. Yeah, so Ms. Helen Mountford is the President and CEO of ClimateWorks Foundation with 25 years of global experience at the intersection of environmental action, economic development, and climate policy. She was the Vice President of Climate and Economics at World Resources Institute, the Program Director for the New Climate Economy Project of the Global Commission on the Economic and Climate. She was also the Deputy Director of Environment for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, and for over 16 years advising governments on policy reforms. She managed also recycling schemes in England and worked for an NGO in Australia. So she holds master degrees in environmental economics and environmental management, BA in philosophy and history. So she has a vast experience in the area of environmental action, and also in economic development, climate policy. And she also has an interdisciplinary background. I think this contributes to her work. So we are excited to listen to her presentation later. Now we have a very distinguished speaker, Mr. Rachmat Witoelar. We know, everybody know him. So Mr. Rachmat Witoelar is the former Indonesian president's special envoy for climate change and was the Indonesian Minister of Environment and the executive chair of the Indonesian National Council on Climate Change. He is the head of the Indonesian delegation for the Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework on Climate Change since COP11 in 2005 until COP22 in 2015. It's a long time, a long years following all the discussions in COP11 until COP22. And he was also held the presidency position of the UNEP of COP13 and then COP9 as well. So he was an Indonesia's ambassador to the Russian Federation, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Mongolia, and a member of the Indonesian Parliament. He is graduated as an architect from ITB, Institut Teknologi Bandung, in 1971, and is an adjunct professor in environmental management from Griffith University and associate professor in UE. So we will listen to him of his vast experience in dealing with the policies of climate change, not only in Indonesia, but also in the world. And then the third speaker is Mr. Agus Sari. Mr. Agus Sari is the Chief Executive Officer of Landscape Indonesia, also an advisory company that strives at the nexus of sustainable landscape management, sustainable infrastructure, circular economy, climate change, and finance since 2016. He is also a lecturer and co-founding of the Sustainability Master of Business Administration at the School of Business and Management, ITB, a lead author of the IPCC Working Group 3. CEO, he was a CEO of Philanthropy Foundation, a member and chair of the Funding and Financing Instrument Working Group of the Presidential Task Force on REDD+, and the Deputy Minister or Chair of the REDD+ Management Agency. In 2012 and up to 2015, he was co-chair of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Work Program on REDD and Finance. And he holds an advanced degree from the Energy and Resources Group, University of California, Berkeley, United States. So we can learn from him about not only the landscape management, sustainable infrastructure, but also about the economy, climate change, and finance. We listen to his presentation later. At last, we have Mr. Klaus Milke. So since 2011, he is the chairman of the steering group of the International Platform Foundations 20, all over the world, with the background as founder and chairman of the Foundation for Sustainability. So Foundation 20 is today a platform of more than 75 foundations in the G20 context, focused on the implementation of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and of the Paris Climate Agreement. So since 1991, Klaus Milke was in the board of German Watch, a German development and environmental non-governmental organization very much focused on climate and energy. And from 2005 to 2019, Mr. Klaus was chairman of German Watch. Now he is honorary chair of this German NGO. He has graduated economics, followed by studies of sociology and political science, and with an early experience in the executive board of a middle-sized company. He is today consulting governments, corporates, and civil society groups. And I know Mr. Klaus, since he came to collaborate with the Indonesian philanthropists to prepare the contribution of F20 to the G20 summit with the Indonesian presidency later on in October 2022. So welcome to all those speakers. And first of all, let's us listen to Miss Helen Mountford through her pre-recorded video. Please, could you please present her video?
Hello, I'm Helen Mountford, President and CEO of ClimateWorks Foundation. It is an honor to join you today, though I do wish I could be there in person with you. ClimateWorks Foundation's mission is to end the climate crisis by amplifying the power of philanthropy. As a global organization, we bring together philanthropists and grantees worldwide to help them in innovating and accelerating climate solutions that can scale. We deliver global programs across sectors like power, transportation, food and agriculture, forest and land use, super pollutants, cooling, and more. We also offer data and intelligence, as well as grant-making and collaboration services to equip the climate philanthropy community with the knowledge, the networks, and the solutions to drive change. Since 2008, at ClimateWorks, we've granted over $1.3 billion to more than 600 grantees in over 40 countries. Our goal is to help philanthropy get more money to the ground more quickly and collaboratively and targeted to the most promising climate solutions. We all know that the climate crisis is humanity's biggest challenge, and the urgency is clear. We have 8 years to have emissions to stay within a safe range of warming. There is no time to lose. And with the recent IPCC reports, we've seen how every fraction of a degree of warming matters. We will need to use all the tools in our toolkit to peak emissions as soon as possible and to reach net zero by 2050. Even now, as the world emerges from the COVID pandemic, and we face multiple crises, whether it is high energy prices, risks of food insecurity, inflation and costs of living rises, or others, we know that we cannot tackle these successfully if we don't also tackle climate change. We must address these crises together. For example, climate change is already putting crops at risk and will increasingly do so, putting food at risk for people around the world. So any durable solution to today's food crisis must also help us to reduce the risk of future food crises resulting from climate change. So what can philanthropy do to help tackle the climate crisis? Philanthropy has already played a critical role in advancing climate progress, and it's well positioned to do even more as funders bring critical new investments to this fight. As the climate philanthropy community grows with new investors and more funds each year, there are opportunities to work even better together and with our partners to get money out the door rapidly and focused on the biggest opportunities for impact. Our focus collectively now needs to be on how we can help countries and others to implement and then accelerate climate action following COP26, as there is still a lot to be done. There were a number of ambitious commitments announced last year, which together, if fully implemented, will put us on track for keeping global warming at 2 degrees Celsius. This is not enough. We need to keep pushing for a 1.5C goal, but it is real progress. The progress that we've seen includes more ambitious climate plans by countries, by cities, businesses, the finance sector, and others, as well as a number of multi-stakeholder collaborations to tackle issues such as methane emissions, to halt and reverse deforestation, to accelerate the use of electric vehicles, and many more. An estimated 90% of the world economy is now committed to net zero emission trajectories by around mid-century. That includes 83 countries responsible for 74% of global emissions, and over 1,000 cities, 5,000 businesses, and 450 asset managers, asset owners, and banks who are responsible for $130 trillion in assets. The immediate challenges now are threefold. First, we need to ensure these net zero commitments are backed up by credible science-based pathways and clear intermediate targets. Second, we need to ensure they are turned into real action, policies, and investments on the ground, and that the immediate measures that we're putting in place now to ease the fuel crisis arising from the war in Ukraine don't lead to the lock-in of unnecessary additional fossil fuel infrastructure over the longer term. And third, we need to make real progress on the long neglected agendas of providing the finance and support needed for developing countries to recover from the pandemic, to build resilience to climate impacts, to address the losses and damages they are already facing, and to move on a trajectory to a low carbon future. Philanthropy can play a vital role in helping advance action across all three of these priorities by working in partnership with governments, with corporate leaders, and local communities. We know that Asia and Southeast Asia are particularly critical and pivotal in the fight against climate change. Southeast Asia, one of the world's most vibrant and fastest growing developing regions, is also one of the most vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change. Governments in the region have been stepping up their leadership to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and as they seek to further do so, significantly more investment will be needed to support them in decarbonizing their economies, and doing so in a way that creates jobs and livelihoods, boosts local economies, and ensures access by all to affordable, clean energy and healthy food. Despite the region's important role in the planet's climate future, philanthropic giving directed here is relatively small. The annual average of foundation giving to the Southeast Asia region from 2015 to 2020 was just $45 million US. This is not a lot compared to what some other regions are getting, particularly in North America. This is where, as philanthropists, we can work together to increase investments that can help identify opportunities to step up climate action, engaging with government, business leaders, academia, and civil society partners. And at its best, we know that philanthropy can help to take some of the initial risks of these investments, being nimble and testing new approaches that can help to catalyze action. And with the success of these initiatives, then attract much larger public and private investments, which can really help to take them to scale. This catalytic role for philanthropy is absolutely essential, as is the speed and nimbleness that we can provide. There are a number of opportunities for the climate philanthropy community to collaborate with partners and support a low-carbon transition in Asia and Southeast Asia. This includes supporting the efforts of national governments and subnational policymakers to identify solutions and develop clear decarbonization pathways, working with business to boost corporate leadership and help them identify practical solutions, and helping remove barriers and attracting private investment to clean energy solutions, which must triple in this decade. Altogether, this can help to contribute to the region's vibrant entrepreneurship environment and support innovation in technology and business models. Just a few examples of catalytic support we're seeing from climate philanthropy in the region include the following. One is the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership, a multi-donor platform of global climate philanthropies, developed country governments, and Asian countries partnering together to support smart policymaking, local capacity building and energy efficiency, and renewable energy. By combining the best of the public and private sectors with the UN, the partnership has helped mobilize and coordinate technical and financial resources to build a strong basis for renewable energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable, resilient infrastructures in Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Another example is Philanthropy's partnering with venture capitalists to establish a Southeast Asia clean energy facility to encourage early stage development capital to solar, wind, storage, energy efficiency, electric mobility, and infrastructure businesses and projects in the Southeast Asia region. A third example is Philanthropy's partnering with national think tanks to support solar ambition by governments in the region, such as through Bloomberg Philanthropy's partnership with the Institute for Essential Services Reform to help Indonesia to meet its 23% renewable energy target by 2025, while also keeping electricity affordable and reliable for households and for businesses. Global climate philanthropies are increasingly active in the region and are increasingly focused on decarbonizing energy-related sectors, including power, transport, and industry, and doing so in a way that benefits the local communities and ensures a just transition. This is very welcome, as historically these areas in this region have been underfunded by philanthropy, but there's still more that we can do collectively. We need to ensure that this increased support for energy decarbonization can help to contribute to our global climate goals, while also making the region's economies more competitive and ensuring that there are benefits in terms of quality of life for local residents, for example, through improved air and water quality. We know that climate philanthropy is on a learning journey, especially as the climate philanthropy landscape continues to broaden and deepen in key regions here in Southeast Asia. Each country has a unique ecosystem of philanthropies, and where the international philanthropies can best add value will vary accordingly. At ClimateWorks, we're keen to partner and exchange with philanthropic organizations in Indonesia and the Southeast Asia region to help support local philanthropy engaged in climate and sustainability solutions here. We're also excited to see the Philanthropy's Outlook 2022, which is being published at this meeting, and will have important insights into philanthropic growth and opportunities in the region. We welcome the opportunity to work with the Philanthropy Indonesia to continue to strengthen the data, tracking, and understanding and analysis of climate philanthropy for future reports and discussions. And we welcome the opportunity to facilitate exchanges and learning on climate philanthropy with Indonesia's family and corporate foundations and with civil society resource organizations. We look forward to working closely in partnership with you all to support the Asia and Southeast Asia region to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals and to build resilient, thriving economies with the support of philanthropy. Thank you, and I wish you all excellent discussions.
I wish I could say thank you to you directly, Helen, for your very comprehensive presentation of all problems, challenges, what we can do, what we should do, and what we can do in our collaboration with the government, with the other stakeholders, with local communities, and to fasten the reduction of the gas emission and to achieve the low carbon development and through a just energy transition. And you mentioned already so many problems that can be related to climate change. I think what Helen's mentioned can be our, our reference for our future programs, our near future programs, to fasten our programs to reach the goal to reduce the global warming in the world. If not, then so many problems will emerge, as mentioned already by Helen. So let's move on to the second speaker, our very honorable guest, Mr. Rachmat Witoelar. Time is yours. Please move on with your presentation.
Well, thank you, moderator. My name is Rachmat Witoelar. I'm Indonesian, and I was introduced with a very lengthy story, but please don't believe everything that you hear. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the initiators of this forum. It is very useful, and it will be the groundbreaking for the future of philanthropy and climate change. Talking about philanthropy and climate change, I would like to point out some major points in that relationship. First of all, we would be looking for the best relationship between philanthropy and climate change mitigation and adaptation. Because if we don't know that, then we will be lost in the woods. But then again, I would like to go deeper into the problem of the climate change mitigation and adaptation. We all know what it is. I mean, all those present at this forum certainly knows what climate change is. But we want to know how we can enlarge our efforts to overcome that. And one of the strategies to do that is go to the basics, because climate change and philanthropy necessarily are one and the same problem for humankind. It is a common problem for everybody on this earth. So everybody who is concerned with trying to have a good livelihood will have to do their best to increase the efforts in climate change and philanthropy. The word philanthropy sounds a bit difficult to understand for the lay people. Although in Indonesia, I would suggest that Indonesia, the philanthropy actions of the common people is already there. We are very care for each other, and if we see somebody who is in need, we give anything that we can support for them. And if we project it into the climate change, if we see that the climate change is worsening its effect, people would like to think what they can do for that. Actually, it doesn't need too big an effort. The very small effort, every little thing helps. When I was younger, in my capacity of a minister, I taught the little children, because they were asking, what can I do for climate change? Said they can do very simple things. Just pick up the trash and put it in the trash bin. And don't throw trash away just like that. So very little movements, if multiplied by millions of people or billions of people all over the world, will be a very powerful measure to fight climate change, because trash and our waste translate into emissions, and that is what is the whole problem is. And what is philanthropy actually? Philanthropy is in my very simple understanding, is the love of humankind for other people. So if we love our neighbors, if we love our brothers and sisters, then we are part of philanthropy. But how do you combine it with climate change efforts? We have to find a system, a collective system that can collect the powers of the philanthropy and the collective strategies of climate change together. So in that respect, I would like to repeat that actually the major point of philanthropy and climate change actually is very simple. There's a common denominator. It is mankind himself. Every individual in this world is walking a philanthropist to fight against the climate change. In an international scale, we have witnessed and we have enjoyed the conference of parties that we have in the UNFCCC, the UN has held all across the years. I was closely involved in conference of parties in Bali, and since then I followed all the steps of climate change until the Glasgow. And later this year, we will will join the 27th COP in Egypt. But if we have no actual progress in trying to find systems where we can collect and optimize the potential of philanthropy and catalyze and mobilize the collective action of the people, I don't think even 2 or 3 COPs later, we will still be in the same road as we are now. We are now entering a phase where the climate change is now at a very critical moment. The IPCC has reckoned that within this 5 or 10 years, the problem of the climate change is irreversible. So it is very urgent that everybody really optimize their roles and potential to contribute and address the climate change. So I repeat, so what is the best strategies for fighting climate change and the funding of climate change is appealing to the concern of everybody in this world. And that is why at the first address that I have mentioned is that I congratulate the initiators of this Philanthropy Learning Forum to increase the common interest and action and funding system for climate change mitigation and adaptation. In that respect, I hope that this Philanthropy Learning Forum will increase philanthropy literacy and interest across all generations, cultures, and nationalities, because nobody is helped by not working together. We have to work together, and for that to work together, we have to have a common understanding, which this Philanthropy Learning Forum does its best to do so. Well, that is my initial address today. I'm open for discussion, and thank you for the opportunity to address you. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rachmat Witoelar. So this is the second wake-up call from you, following Ms. Helen. Not only wake-up call, but a very alarming call. It's because climate change is a very critical. It is an urgent matter. It is an urgent problem, and we need to address it as soon as possible. We are running out of the time, and I think the wake-up call for philanthropies in the world, and especially in Indonesia. I like your two issues mentioned, that as individual, we can do whatever we can to help reducing the damage to the environment, even by collecting the litters, or by what you call it, not just throwing the waste anywhere, but just do little things, and then the results will be enormous. But the second thing is that the philanthropy itself, what does it mean? So it is a place, it's an arena to love, to care one another as humankind. And I think as a philanthropist, we can do lots with our collaboration, not only in Indonesia, but also in the world. Thank you, Mr. Rachmat Witoelar, for your alarming clock. Okay, now we move on to Mr. Agus Sari, who will share his experience with the financing aspect of climate change, climate things. So funding is a major problem. So time is yours. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bu Yunita. And it's really an honor for me to be here amongst honorable panel and good friends. Really good to see my good friends, Bu Helen Mountford, that I've known since WRI, and also Pak Rachmat Witoelar, my dear, I should say brother. It's really nice to see you, Pak Rachmat, here, and Pak Klaus. My presentation, a very, very short presentation, is about the role of philanthropic financing and climate finance. But let me add to the already dire alarms that both of the former panelists have already mentioned. I've been, I've been lead author of one of the 3 IPCC reports, especially Working Group 3, which report was just released most recently. But as you've probably heard, the first time IPCC issued the series of reports, the response from the Secretary General of the United Nations basically commented that that was a code red for humanity. It's a very, very big alarm bell that was ringing by the time the report was issued. And then a lot of people say, well, let's just adapt to climate change. We can adapt to climate change. We are an adaptable being. But then the second report did say that, apparently the changes will probably be faster than the capability of human being to adapt. So basically, impacts will be felt, and we are already feeling it through the heat waves in so many places, actually, including in Europe, in Southern Europe, in India, in Pakistan, and in some other parts. Last year, the temperature of the North Pole actually was several degrees warmer than average. That actually led to melting of, actually, I was going to say billions, but indeed it was actually trillions of tons of ice, permanent ice, melting and then becoming, additional volume to the seawater, bringing the average sea level to rise. And we've seen it all over the world. That actually right now in Florida, for no reason at all, it's actually flooded. In Indonesia, about 2 weeks ago, Semarang got flooded for no good reason. So what is Philanthropic going to do, in addition to, of course, shield people from the climate crisis and climate disasters? I know what in addition to basically helping people to cope with the impacts. What I'd like to do is to basically show you this. I think we are in a time when there is no real differentiation between sources of financing, sources of funding. We are in the era where people started talking about blended financing. And the reason why is because we do need a lot of money. We, last year, we only probably managed to get about $600 billion worth of financing globally. But we need trillions, we need trillions of dollars on a yearly basis. So we need a lot more than we have already managed to gather. And the reason why is because we need to both adapt as well as mitigate. The third and last report of the IPCC shows that actually there is still time, although it's closing. The window is indeed closing. The time to act is now. Basically, quoting a lot of people say about it is basically, the time to act is now. It's basically now or never. And the reason why blended financing has come to bring a momentum is because the areas that require financing is basically as complex as the sources and the structure of financing itself. There's a lot of risks involved. The public risks as well as the private risks, low risk as well as high risks. And what should we do when we, if we are faced by the basically a portfolio of financing that has the whole range of risks, from the very, very high risk and to the very, very low risk, but all in the same sort of portfolio. What we need to do indeed is to blend all sources of financing. That includes philanthropy. I'm quoting the definition of blended financing here from the Blended Finance Task Force, Better Finance, Better World. I think it was released in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So if we do have a concoction of sources of financing, philanthropy, corporate grants, these are usually the ones that would face the highest level of risks, and especially because these are grants, they don't require returns, except basically outcome returns in terms of impacts. And then we have public funding that would invest in or that would finance areas with public benefits that would cover public risk. And public investment would probably be provided with low return expectation. Simply because public investment, even though it indeed still expects quite a healthy return, it actually values public benefits more than the private return. And then we have impact investment, and then private commercial financing as the next level that would probably expect less and less risks. So the combination of these sources of financing would be able to cover the combination of risks that usually the complexity of climate financing would require. And this is what I think the world of financing would look like. And this is where philanthropy would be positioned. What it does is basically to allow for, first, covering the highest possible level of risks. The second is to be able to leverage other financing. That includes corporate grants, public funding, public investment, impact investment, all the way to private commercial financing. For every dollar of philanthropy that is being spent, it needs to be able to attract a lot more dollars in terms of other financing sources. So that's basically what I see the world of philanthropy, the world of climate financing would look like. I'm going to show you this, basically, a little bit of data to bring us to reality. We have concessional ODA to about, 143 billion in 2016. I took this from the Blended Finance Task Force report of 2017. Concessional or commercial funds from the multilateral development banks, about 220 billion. And then we have basically philanthropic funds from foundations amounting about $1 trillion. And that is quite a large amount. That is only second to commercial investment. That is about $6 trillion per year of the total asset under management of about 200 trillion. Of course, the 1 trillion is not comparable to 200 trillion, but that's the second largest kinds of financing that's available in the world. And then you have investment funds, impact funds, about 1 to 2 billion. Investment by impact funds actually is about in total 114 billion. So this is the picture in about 5 years ago. I'd like to show you a bit more recent data that last year, I think in 2020 it was, published in 2021 by the Climate Policy Initiative. We actually have $632 billion annual financing for climate change. And that would be for mitigation, that's almost half, about 40%. And then adaptation has very, very little share there. And then a combination, multiple objectives. That includes capacity building and others. And you see that grants actually occupies about 36 billion. And you see that still quite small compared to many other sources of financing. That actually could, while it is actually small, it could be used strategically. And if you can use it a lot more strategically, you can actually get it as get it to leverage a lot more climate financing in some other forms. So 632, that's divided into basically two. We're talking about 320 from public funding and 310. So it's roughly half and half. 51 and 49 between public and private financing from state-owned enterprises, bilateral development finance, governments, and so on and so forth. And then we have also financing from the private sector, and that includes actually households and individuals that pay for its own mitigation efforts. For example, some households install solar panel on their rooftops. These are investments that are done by individuals and by households, and that is actually quite a large amount, about $55 billion in 2020. Although it's not so much compared to the year before. But this is the picture that we are seeing right now. $630 billion worth of financing, not a lot yet from the philanthropies, and we do need to make sure that the philanthropic source of funding can be done in a very strategic structure so that it can initiate a lot more financing from other sources. I guess that's what I have to say, Bu Yunita, and I welcome comments and, of course, questions from anybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agus, Sari. So you add another wake-up call, very alarming call that we have to move faster and fast. But anyway, in the midst of constraining and anxiety, you provide an opportunity. I mean, for the solution that philanthropy can contribute more. Yeah? You mentioned at the end that philanthropy still contribute a little. So the blended financing, I think this is the way that we need to do our best to to collect the funding from various sources. You already mentioned various sources and how to use that sources to cover what kind of risk. But anyway, it is a wake-up call for the philanthropists in Indonesia also to contribute more, to add to the billions of trillions of dollars that we need. Yes, I agree with you that for adaptation, I myself was working, facilitating farmers to adapt to climate change. The adaptation, the finance for adaptation to climate change is very much lower than the mitigation. I agree with that. Hopefully it will be more balanced in the future, but balancing, balancing finance, blended financing is a promising way in the future or in the near future. Yeah. Okay, thank you again. And now we come to the final speaker, Mr. Klaus Milke. So you will share your experience of how you built up your collaboration with 75 foundations in the world. My goodness, not only in the world, but you also initiated your effort to build up your collaboration with the Indonesian philanthropists, especially towards G20. So I welcome your talk. So please share your experience. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Yunita. Thank you so much to Philanthropy Indonesia. It's a big pleasure and I'm honored to be here with you from Hamburg. Greetings from Hamburg in Germany, where we are based. And really, it's absolutely fantastic what you are doing with Philanthropy Indonesia just in this year of the G20 presidency of Indonesia, focusing on the implementation of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's so important to point out that Goal 7, Energy for All, and Goal 13, Climate Protection, are in between of the SDGs. So it has to be a holistic approach to bring up whatever we can to implement the SDGs for the world up to 2030. The 2030 agenda is on the table. And so only some years left to implement, mostly for the most poor in the world and for those who are fearing they are left behind. So leave no one behind. That's the main issue of the SDGs. I'm also honored to be with you, Rachmat, Witoelar, because I have been to Bali to the COP in your wonderful country under your leadership as COP president. And that also has shown up as now the G20 presidency of your country, that Indonesia is ready to take over responsibility on this. I have a small presentation, perhaps it can share it with you just now, to give you some picture for all foundations with us from Philanthropy Indonesia. And I think that is important. Agus, you mentioned the need of more money and financing the climate activities, climate protection. but I think it's worthwhile to mention all hands are needed on deck, also from those who have not the money, but knowledge and other instruments on the floor for combating the climate crisis and even the biodiversity crisis. There is an interconnection of both that is absolutely needed to have an eye on. So next slide, please. There you then you can see where we are in, what is the big picture of the G20 process. And you see 2017, that was the starting point of F20, because German foundations, just before the G20 summit in Germany, were very clear they have to take a stand. Such an event is so important that all foundations, or many foundations in Germany, have to show up. They could be part of the solution. And then you see the process up to 2025 with the South African G20 presidency and Indonesia with 2022. The last four in the process are presidencies in the global South. That is very important for the industrialized countries. They are active, of course, in the G7, and they obliged in between of the G20 to show up with most ambition to do what is needed for the rest of the world. The G7 are obliged to do their very best, but also the G20, because all the other countries in the world are dependent on the ambition and action of the G20. I'll come to this later on. On the right side of the slides, you see the COP processes where we are in. Only the last ones. We are already in at COP26, COP27, and between there was a COP in Bali. I attended already COP1 in Berlin in 1995. So I long the long, boring process of climate negotiations, but they are needed. All countries have to show up what they are doing, and all have to show up they are in responsibility. Next slide, please. There you see why we are doing our focus on the G20. The G20 really are those countries representing 2/3 of the world's population, around 90% of global GDP, and almost 80% of world trade. And that's important, more or less 75% of the CO2 emissions worldwide. So to limit global warming to less than 1.5 degrees, the G20 have to move forward. And what we are doing with F20, Foundations 20, that means in the context of the G20, that is the umbrella of the SDGs, as I mentioned before, and to build bridges between foundations and many other stakeholders in the societies of the G20, as it is the business sector, the B20, the financial sector linked to this, the think tanks, the civil society, Women 20, S20, Yunita is linked very much with the Science 20, as I learned. And so this is important to have a bridging function. So we are not a formal engagement group in the G20 process, but we are a bridging engagement group between several others. And what we are doing is mostly advocacy work towards the leaders of the G20 to show up what can be done, what should be done, and we are on their side as part of the solution. We are networking and research working. Next slide, please. these are the logos of the 75 foundations. And that is really great that we collected several in the world, many in the world, but we need quality, not quantity, because all of these foundations have their specific networks. And ClimateWorks, the wonderful presentation you heard from Helen today, ClimateWorks is also a partner foundation of F20. What is important for us, the diversity of foundations. So we have small ones, middle-sized ones, and giants, and we have community foundations. So really focusing what has to happen on the ground. Next slide, please. And we have 4 wonderful foundations of Indonesia on board and are working closely with Philanthropy Indonesia. The 4 foundations, that is Habibie Center Foundation, Bina Swadaya, Wahid Foundation, and the YDBA Foundation from the Astra Group, the business sector in Indonesia. And Ilham Habibie this year and next year is the co-chair, together with me and an Italian lady, a co-chair of F20 to make it done what is necessary towards the G20 presidency of Indonesia in a good link with the G7 of Germany. Next slide, please. Here you see our main activities this year. One is on the 23rd of June in Munich, but you can look on this via live stream if you want. There we will focus very much on the activity needed by the G7, but already in junction with partnerships with other countries like Indonesia and India. We need more energy and climate partnerships, as perhaps you know. And your president and also the Indian president will be guests at the G7 summit in Germany. And we will bring up some voicing towards what could be happen and what should happen at the G7 summit in Germany. On the 7th and 8th of September, we have a high-level meeting in Jakarta. We will come over to Indonesia and we'll have a 2 days meeting with startups, with activists in Indonesia, with think tanks, business people, and also politicians. That will be also in a live stream format, so it could be looked at from all parts of the world. And we do it in close cooperation with our Indonesian friends, and having also in mind that Indonesia takes over the ASEAN presidency in 2023, so next year. And these issues we are focusing now on are also important for ASEAN. Then third pillar, we will also be active in Sharm el-Sheikh at COP27, together with an Egyptian foundation and others in Africa. COP27, as you perhaps know, will be very much on loss and damage and the perspective of Africa. So we will do our very best to bring this forward and to show up as part of the solution also in Sharm el-Sheikh. Next slide, please. This is more in detail what we are doing in Jakarta on the 7th and 8th of September. And we will do it with the Good Times conference. It's already existing, I think, 3rd time this year, that we show up also with young people, also with the business sector in your country, what could be done. And there is mentioned, Agus mentioned the point on financing, shifting the trillions. That will be also a focus of our Climate Solutions Forum and the renewable energy issue this year of high importance, as we all know. Next slide, please. Yeah, we had a wonderful meeting with your Minister Luhut, the coordinating minister, who he visited Germany and could meet several ministers here in our country. And we discussed also blended finance and other issues in Germany, and also had some opportunity to learn from Johan Rockström and other scientists what on the one hand is the urgency in the field, and on the other hand, what is still an opportunity to use the right instruments. Next slide, please. We work with recommendations, as I mentioned before, towards the leaders of the G20 and the finance minister, the central bank leaders. This year, we have the narrative putting words into deeds, because we have already a lot of positive thinking on the floor, also from the G20, while the presidency of last year. And we can share with you the recommendations already worked out of F20 this year. We use it for G7 and also for G20. Next slide, please. Yeah, focus this year on renewable power and renewables as such. And we propose a G20 renewable power target by 2030. And we are targeting 70% for the G20, not for all the countries specifically, but as for the G20 as such. That needs support, financial support, of course. The instruments are there. And I think, and we think, that could be of high value also for your country to count a lot on renewables, and on the other hand, of course, to bring up a quick start for phase out of coal in your country. Next slide, please. Now, okay, there was only one final slide, with a huge thank you to all of you and to Philanthropy Indonesia. I think together we can do a lot with the foundations already with us. And I think what's worthwhile to say from Indonesia, there's a huge necessity to work on the protection of the rainforest and the nexus area with biodiversity. You have a huge treasure on your country with a rainforest there, and I think much has to be done to save climate, but also to save nature. Thank you a lot. Over to you again, Yunita.
Yes, thank you very much, Klaus, for your detailed description, identifications of what the F20 has been doing, preparing themselves towards the G20, with so details of not only the agendas, but also the recommendations. So thank you very much. You remind again the philanthropists of 3 questions. Why philanthropists has to be participating more, and then what can be done and how. And I think, yeah, and then you mentioned 3 things: advocacy, networking, and research. Yeah, I think those are 3 means, 3 strategies that philanthropists can do. Besides all the, yes, the finance again, it's a problem that maybe on top of what Mr. Agus said, that we also need to reconsider that. But again, thank you for your reminder to us about how important G7, G20, and the COP27, and in the future of how to make, our concerns, our thoughts, put into real practice, into action. So to produce something that can be, can save the planets. I also like your mention about the holistic approach, and no one can be left behind. So thank you again for your description and introduction of your work in trying to build up collaboration with Indonesian philanthropies. So thank you for all the speakers, Helen through the videos, and Mr. Rachmat Witoelar, Mr. Agus, Sari, and also Klaus. I think I do not need to, to wrap up to make the resume. I think all are so, inspiring, motivating us to think over of what we should do in the near future, not to wait too long. Okay, now I would like to open up the discussion, the question and answers. I think Mr. Agus already answered one question in the chat box, but I think it would be good to say again, to mention again the question. I will read first the question by Modi. Wait a moment, and then another one in the chat box. Yeah. So I have a question for Pa Agus, Sari. How can climate finance be channeled most effectively to small-scale producers or individuals? From the diagram you shared before, to my understanding, sounds like blended financing meant to be affiliated to just huge source of finance, huge source of the finance. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, please. So what is your reply to Modi?
Thank you very much, Bu Yunita. Yes, thank you very much, Bu Modi, for the great question. And this has indeed been a challenge, how we can channel the trillions that Klaus also mentioned to the small entities in the fields, small NGOs, small community-based organizations, farmers, indigenous communities that work in the field. One of the ways is indeed. Because otherwise, if you're expecting that the trillions of dollars be channeled directly, then it will probably require a lot bigger institution than the World Bank, right? So what has been done by quite a lot of financial institutions now is to put together intermediary financiers, intermediary institutions, so that the intermediaries would get, bigger tickets, and then rechannel them, redistribute them into smaller pieces, smaller amounts that would then fit with the receptivity capacity of the smaller institutions. Regranting institutions, for example. ClimateWorks, for example, is a regranting institution. It actually gets larger funding, some millions of dollars, and then redistribute them in some hundreds of thousands into organizations. So that can actually be done, and you can actually have a number of layers of regranting institutions, from the trillions to the billions to the millions to the hundreds to some thousands. As long as you can do it efficiently, you can still do it. But that does show indeed the challenge that we have, is how to channel the funding that we've been told exists globally to actually the people that need them the most, those that are affected by climate change in their real lives on a daily basis. That is indeed a challenge. I've talked about the structure, but structure remains structure. We need to implement it efficiently. We need to implement it effectively, and We have tried it, but I agree with you, Bu Maudi. We do need to do better on that. Thank you very much, and I hope other panelists would be able to also help with that.
Mr. Pak Rachmat, if you have answers for that, also Klaus, please contribute your response.
Can I have a word? I think in general, I fully agree with my younger brother, Agus, Sari, because it's a business. But also, I think for the financing, it depends on the literacy of the common people, that they can contribute as little as they can, because we deal in big numbers. Because climate change is everybody's business, and everybody is subjected and victims of climate change. So it is very, very appropriate that everybody does something little to a little and go into the structure that Pak Agus Sari was talking about. It has to be structured so it can be effective. That is my comment, so very short comment.
Okay, thank you. So not only the provider, but also the structure of the recipients, need to be built, need to be strengthened, need to be established. Also, I like what Mr. Witoelar mentioned about the need to literate people, to literate people about the climate change. Mr. Klaus, you have something to say related to this? Yeah, please.
Yeah, Rachmat and Agus, I think we have some learning curve already in the long process of the climate negotiations. We have some funds already. We need more money for these funds, as we all know. And on the one hand, we need those who contribute financing this funding. And on the other hand, it should be used in the right direction. We need monitoring for this and so. So that is still the case today, and we all know it's much more which is needed. On the loss and damage side, we need more or less the same amount as for mitigation and adaptation. Nobody knows exactly how it will be funded in the right way, but that is the course in front of us. And so I agree completely, Agus, that we need different approaches in the same time. So what can be done on the bilateral basis? You know about these different partnerships we all are trying to build up of specific countries with other also big countries in the world, as Germany with India. Germany is now thinking about a deeper partnership also with Indonesia. But also in the course of the United Nations, of course, is needed. So to find out what is the right way forward and what should be avoided also in future, I think that is important. I just want to bring the point, the blended finance idea of Indonesia is really worthwhile to have a deep look in this. And it should be discussed deeply also by the G7 and in the G20 course. I agree completely, but this blended finance shouldn't be too much focused on the private sector only with philanthropy and foundations. I think the private sector with business and financial actors as Allianz in Germany and others, I think is also important to have a look on this, how to integrate it into this process, because there's readiness from big actors in the financial world and also in the business sector in our country and others. And so to invite them to contribute also in the right way, I think that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comment on what Mr. Klaus say about the need that, what you call it, the big business corporates problem, challenge? You have any comment, Mr. Agus or Pak Rachmat? How to integrate the big business into this?
Not only to focus on philanthropy, but also to see the private sector with business and the financial sector as such.
Yeah. Maybe you experience the most challenging things. How about you, Pak Agus and Pak Rachmat?
Yeah, Pak Rachmat is still muted, Pak. Let me do it after Pak Rachmat.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Agus, for yielding your time to me. I think what has been said, I would like to underscore that it is every businesses and everybody to work together. And I would quote what is born in Paris Agreement, that no one must be left behind.
Yeah.
No one will be left out by contributing to this very noble effort in philanthropy to contribute to the climate change mitigation and adaptation. We know that some countries or some people can afford that. We can afford by not doing damaging things, by not throwing trash, not destroying the environment. That is quite a good contribution. Whilst developed nations, they're doing well by trying to find alternative solutions to energy. Of course, sorry that this war breaks out in closest neighborhood. So I hope it stops, because that is a very big source of climate change terror. So if we can intervene or not intervene, just persuade those who are involved to stop this whole charade. The truth to you. Thank you.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you, Bu Yunita. I was gonna follow up on Pak Rachmat's points. I think businesses and private sector respond best against economic and financial signals. And as such, I think we do need to have a very, very strong signal of carbon pricing. Yeah. We need to have it, as high as can be, as long as it's, it remains working, as long as it can cover the externalities of all the damaging actions that private sectors may have, emissions of their of greenhouse gases, deforestation that they cause, and all those things, and internalize all those externalities into their basically their bottom line. And a number of companies actually have done it, and have done, putting carbon pricing, shadow carbon pricing onto their balance sheet, and change their behaviors somehow, responding to it. What I think, when that's done, then you'll see that the economy would shift. And if you're talking about, some trillions of dollars of worth of private sector moving just 1 degree, that's a lot of movement actually. And you can then maintain the momentum by adding more and more signals. And I think what needs to also be said as a narrative to the private sector is that better climate is better business. Yeah, and there is no business in a dying planet. I think that's what needs to be understood by everybody. Yeah. Thank you very much, Bu Yunita.
Yeah, thank you very much for your narratives, for your phrase. Yeah, I like it. better climate is better business. And then the last one, better climate is better business. And then?
There is no business in a dying planet.
There is no business in a dying planet. Great. So maybe we need to spread out that phrases, yeah, and not only spread out the phrase, but how to put that into action and practice. But I like that you mentioned that how to shift the externalities and make it internalities of the business enterprise. Yeah, thank you very much. Let's move on to another question and answers. So this is from Afe Septia. So he mentioned about the fascinating webinar service. And I want to ask, what is the role philanthropy for Indonesian society, especially small community? I'm still don't understand. Please guide me. What is the relationship for usual people or common people about this matter? Thank you in advance. So I think I would like to invite Agus or philanthropist, in Indonesian philanthropist, because Mr. Klaus is more on in a global international world.
But I can speak to this point also from my side.
Oh yeah, okay, okay, please.
But so, first, Agus, please.
Yeah, Agus, please.
Thank you, Klaus. I think the experience might actually be generic, so I would appreciate Klaus's perspectives on this. But I think I did mention a little bit of how we do still need to have better structure to bring larger philanthropic tickets. Larger philanthropic financing into the smaller the community, and I think Rachmat also mentioned, by increasing the capacity of the local communities, the small community groups, to be able to absorb and take advantage of the climate finance is important. But I think what is also important is to see climate change as our daily lives, and this is probably, I don't know, but probably what Rachmat also meant about increasing the literacy of the communities on climate change, because we are so used to thinking that climate change is something that is foreign, something that's outside of our scope of attention. It's in the future, something that is not at all based on our daily realities. Yeah, I'm not even talking about local communities outside of the urban areas. If we are talking about, the Joe average in Jakarta, quite a lot of them would basically say climate change, that's the developed countries' problem, not our problem. What is climate change? What do you mean by it, right? So bringing the issue of climate change to their real their daily realities, their daily lives, the food that they eat, the water that they drink, the air that they breathe, and then the whole environment that they live in. That's basically what would probably touch their hearts, that we have already right now experienced it, the ever increasing price of food, for example, that would basically marginalize quite a lot of people who can easily buy food. Why is it? Of course, there are a number of reasons, but quite a big reason of it is the changing climate. People cannot actually plant food crops as easily as they used to. So those are the things that I think need to be done. that we need to work with rather than for the local community. Thank you.
Do you think that philanthropies should do more on that? Should contribute more on educating and literating people from all layers of the community society, and from the urban to rural, from the even the educated people also, because they do not experience everyday, what you call everyday changes in there, because they do not cultivate their environment, they do not expose to the environment, so it is far away. Yeah, okay, maybe Klaus, you have something to add?
Yes, three very short points on this. Yeah. One is, I learned a lot that Bina Swadaya is doing a lot in Indonesia in this regard. And that is really fantastic. Yunita, you could tell us stories about this because you are with Bina Swadaya. But I think there is already such a learning curve in between of the foundation and also with all the partners you are working with Bina Swadaya. Next point is, that is also the question of the listener, the usual person, what they can do. I think all normal people and usual people are relevant. That is important for what has to be done on a global scale. Act locally, think globally. That is important, and you all are needed who are now here with us in this wonderful webinar. And third point is the 118, as I learned, foundations at Philanthropy Indonesia. They are all the diversity of these foundations is relevant for combating the climate crisis. With all your different instruments, you are really relevant. It's not the need yet all of you bring up the big sum for financing what has to be done on the Indonesian scale or on the global scale. That is also needed, but not from all of you. You can do what you do on a local scale in the rural area, in the urban area. I think that is what is needed for all of us to save our future and the future of my grandchildren. I have 4 grandchildren, and that moves me forward why I'm still so active.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think those are parts of the philanthropy's responsibility, and maybe we need another time webinar to share experiences of the Indonesian philanthropists. I'm sorry, I have to move on because time is running out. There is another question. How do you see the impact of house gases and deforestation on climate change, particularly for Southeast Asia? What kinds of efforts have to be done, have been done? Yeah, okay, please. So maybe Pak Rachmat can answer this based on your experience, the impact of house gases and deforestation. Yeah. Please unmute your yes.
Greenhouse gases for Indonesia is actually the same effect of greenhouse gases anywhere in the world. So, because we have no boundaries on that, but we have some differences, which is in Indonesia as well as other developing countries. We are more sensitive and more vulnerable because we do not have the options that is available for the developed countries. So the greenhouse gases in the technical sense, in the scientific sense, is the same. But I would suggest that it is a careless thing to say that the source of the climate problem is not only in the developing countries with the so-called deforestation, but also in the developed countries with their industrialization. But no, it has been realized, everyone is working together, and everybody contributes a little bit to the effort. So in this respect, maybe may I offer a saying is already there, which is, in this respect, we have to think global, but we have to act local. We think about big picture, but we have to take care that the moment we step out of the house, we think about what we can do to avoid the worsening problem. So I will not divide it into developed or developing countries. It is everybody's business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Rachmat. Is there any additional answer from Mr. Klaus or Agus or enough?
No,
yeah,
it's okay.
I could add a little bit to what's already very excellently mentioned or responded by Pak Rachmat. Forest has a lot of what is called ecosystem services. Yeah, so it not only regulates carbon cycle, but it also regulates hydrological cycle. It actually absorbs water, brings water into the ground and gets it up and becomes, basically usable, potable water. And climate change changes all that. And in addition to not being able to absorb carbon, it also, loses its ability to regulate hydrological cycle. That basically means a lot more floods and a lot more problems with our hydrological cycle, and that would affect a lot of people in Southeast Asia, because agriculture is still a dominant economy in the region, and water, of course, water is needed not only for agriculture but also for many other reasons. But agriculture would be greatly devastated by the problem of stem from deforestation. That's the problem. But I would actually like to express my recognition of what Indonesian government has done to its forests. From probably 10 years ago, Pak Rachmat, Indonesia used to be number one, deforester of the world. I think by now the rate of deforestation has gone, down quite significantly to, probably about, if the number says reality, 90% reduction of deforestation, and that's actually a very, very big achievement by everybody. But also, I would specifically recognize the role of the government in ensuring that regulations and legal enforcement are done properly, and that, I think, is a contribution to the world's effort to address climate change, Bu Yunita.
Thank you very much. I think by having your remark, then we need to close this session, but I like it. The discussion is very lively and I think inspiring. And if I would like to continue your Agus mentioned, now we have to go to the energy transition. How about the monocultural, kelapa sawit, for example, and then minings, etc., and how to return that, I think, reverse it. Now it is a big challenge for us in the near future. We all agree. But I think I would like to say my great, sincere, grateful to all of you, the speakers, and also those who ask questions. And I'm sorry if we do not have time anymore to continue our discussions. But I think this is a beginning of the near future, the future discussions more on practical things of how to make this happen. So thank you again for all of you. And I return the time to the MC. Ibu Dinda, please, the time is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to our great panelists and moderator for the discussion that I believe give us new insights related to this topic. Before we end today's forum, we would like to invite all the panelists and moderator to take some documentation. We highly encourage the panelists and moderator, also Pak Agus to open the camera so we can start the photo session. We will take the photo 3 times. On my mark, everyone is ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Again, 1, 2, 3. Last time, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. For the the closing statement, I will, on behalf of Philanthropy Indonesia, we would like to say thank you to Bu Yunita, Pak Rachmat, Pak Agus, Mr. Klaus, and Helen for sharing your thoughts, best practices, and some recommendations that related to optimizing philanthropy's role in tackling climate change, especially post-COP26. Bapak, Ibu, all these distinguished participants, today's forum is recorded by the committee. If you want to rewatch this forum, please visit our YouTube channel on Philanthropy TV or visit our website on fifest.id. Keep following FIFEST 2022 through our social media and website on fifest.id to get know more about forum and activity series, because there will be interesting upcoming series that be insightful for all of us. We look forward to welcoming you in the next forum. Thank you and see you soon. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, good night.
Thank you, Mr. Klaus, Agus,
all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guzman, to invite us.
Thank you.
Terima kasih. Very lively discussion.
Nice to meet you again.
Yeah.
Again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.